I attempted to beat a hardcore Nuzlocke by investing in the stock market. Back in January, I started a Pokemon challenge of my own design. I started out with an allowance of $3,000, which I could buy Pokemon to use in my Nuzlocke challenge. Each Pokemon's cost was their base stat total, and I had to pay for the stat increase every time I evolved a Pokemon. So the $3,000 really wasn't enough to give me a very strong team. That's where the stock market came in. Each week, I had the opportunity to buy Pokemon and invest in the stock market before facing a gym leader. I then waited a week before the next gym challenge to see how my investments did. To make the video a bit more interesting, I took the difference between the cost of my initial investment and the stock's current price and multiplied it by 10 to figure out how much money I would gain or lose. This meant if a stock did really well, it was really good for my challenge. If it did poorly, it was really bad. It's Monday, January 6th, the start of the first full week of 2025. The first thing I do is look at the Dow Jones and see what number is in the last digit to determine which gym leader I have to face. This week it ends in a 9, so I'm fighting the gym leader from the 9th generation, Katie the bug-type user. Now for my first Pokemon, I must choose a starter. I decided to pick Chimchar because his fire type will be great against Katie, and the level cap for the gym is 15, meaning he can immediately evolve into Monferno. From there, I choose a bunch of stocks to invest in, including 2 shares of Google, 2 shares of Microsoft, 2 shares of Amazon, 2 shares of PayPal, and 1 share of Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing. This leaves me with a remaining bank of $494 to save for next week. This means I'm relying on Pal the Monferno to single-handedly take down Katie's team, but I think he can do it. 1 Ember is all it takes to knock out her Nimble, and it only takes 2 to defeat her Tarantula. Teddiursa is her last Pokemon, so I start with a super effective Mach Punch. She then terastallizes Teddiursa into the Bug type, making him resist my Mach Punch on the following turn. Fury Swipes hits 4 times that turn, which does a lot of damage, but fortunately Pal survives to finish the battle with 1 last Ember. On week 2, I immediately see that the stock market is down. I look through my individual investments and every single one of them has lost money. Since the losses are increased by a factor of 10 for my challenge, this is very bad, and I can't justify selling any of my stocks when they are this low. I decide to keep all of the money invested and see if they improve the following week, meaning I'll need to dip into my bank if I want a new Pokemon this week. I look at the Dow, which ends in a 6 this week, meaning I'll be facing the second gym leader from Kalos, Grant. His rock types have a number of weaknesses, but I decide I want a steel type for my team. I decide on Tinkatuff, whose fairy type I think could also be helpful in the long run. This brings my bank down to 114 as I head into battle on week 2. Grant's first Pokemon Amora goes down to just 2 of Tinkatuff's Metal Claws, but before it does, it uses Thunder Wave to paralyze my Pokemon. I keep her in against Tyrunt to begin working down its health with Metal Claw, but due to a turn of full paralysis, I need to switch into Monferno. Fortunately at this point, Tyrunt's health is low enough that 1 priority Mach Punch is all it takes to win my second gym battle. Week 3 starts on a Tuesday since the markets were closed for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Things have improved dramatically since the previous week, and all of my investments besides TSM are now making me money. I decide to sell Google, Amazon, and PayPal, hanging on to my Microsoft and Taiwan Semiconductor stocks for a little longer. The Dow ends in a 6 once again, meaning I'll have to face Kalos' fighting gym leader, Karina. I faced her before my ex-hardcore Nuzlocke, so I know a secret to winning this fight. 2 of her 3 Pokemon cannot hit ghost types. For that reason, I purchased a personal favorite Pokemon of mine, Golett. With my remaining budget, I invest in 2 shares of Apple and 1 of Disney, leaving me with $507 to save for next week. Golett is all it takes to beat Karina's team. A few stomping tantrums wipe out her Machoke, and I can coast through her Mienfoo and Hawlucha, who have no way of hitting me. My team is starting to look great as I head into week 4 of the challenge. For week 4, the Dow Jones ends in a 3, meaning I'll have to go against Flannery's fire types. My team is decently prepared to handle fire Pokemon, but I want to be extra sure by choosing a new team member. I sell my Disney stock to bolster my bank enough to make a pricey purchase. Wash Rotom. An electric type who is immune to ground type moves and has the water typing is a perfect way to round out my team. I lead with Golem the Golett against Slugma, who takes it out with 1 Stomping Tantrum, but gets burned by its Flame Body ability, cutting its attack in half. This means it's not strong enough to take out Flannery's next Pokemon Numel in 1 hit. Fortunately, a second one does the job though. When Torkoal comes out, I use Monferno as a pivot to resist an Overheat, which cuts Torkoal's special attack in half. Finally, I switch into Rototom to use a Hydro Pump and earn my 4th gym badge of the challenge. Week 5 takes me to Alola, and this one is the Electric Trial, so I'll need to beat these 3 Pokemon. Unfortunately, they are all resistant or immune to ground-type moves. This week, my Apple investments are doing well, so I decide to sell them while I'm ahead, then invest again in Microsoft and Nvidia. I start with PAL against Vikavolt, dealing good damage with a critical hit Flame Wheel, though Vikavolt's berry reduces the attack's strength. Vikavolt begins to charge its attack for the next turn. I bring down Vikavolt's health into the yellow, but its Spark Attack does a ton of damage and paralyzes PAL. It's too risky to stay in, so I maneuver into Tinkerbell the Tinkatuff. Her hits are far less effective against Vikavolt, and soon she gets paralyzed too. I switch in a Golem on a Spark and finish it off with Shadow Punch. The first Charge Bug comes next, and it can only hit Golem with Mud Slap, lowering his accuracy each turn. Fortunately, Golem knows Shadow Punch, which can't miss. The last Charge Bug knows Bite though, so it's not safe to keep Golem in. I switch in a Rototom who does a lot of damage to Charge Bug with Hydro Pump, but its Spark Attacks bring Rototom's health too low. I can't risk Hydro Pump missing or I'll lose my first Pokemon of the run. I switch in a Golem on a Spark, then outspeed with a Shadow Punch to finish the messy battle and earn my 5th badge. Week 6's Dow ends in a 5, which takes me to the Unova region to fight Skyla. I think Rototom can take this team down all on its own, so instead of buying a new Pokemon, I just shuffle around my investments. I sell Nvidia, which is doing well, and use some of that money to buy 2 shares of Google. The battle begins against Swoobat, and it's off to a rough start. Swoobat's first 2 Heart Stamps both cause Rototom to flinch before I can take it out with a Shockwave. Its health is already in the yellow by the time the second Pokemon, Unfezant, comes out. 2 Shockwaves take it out as well, but Rototom's health is at 10% and it desperately needs to switch. Swanna is fast and can outspeed my whole team. I start out with Tinkerbell, who begins to chip away Swanna's health with Play Rough, but soon she is in the red too. Monferno is my only hope to win this battle, but I won't be able to switch him in safely. I need to sacrifice one of my 3 other teammates. Reluctantly, I switch in a Golem and let him go down to a Bubble Beam. This is a tragic loss, but a noble sacrifice that allows Monferno to come in and use a priority Mach Punch to move before Swanna and finish my 6th gym battle. Week 7 begins on a Tuesday due to the markets being closed on President's Day. This time, I will be traveling to the Galar region to fight Piers, the Dark-type leader. This is a great matchup for my team, who are led by a Fighting type and a Fairy type. Thanks to the new level cap, I'm also able to evolve both of them, depleting most of my remaining bank. All of my investments are losing money for the moment, so I keep my current team of 3 to face Piers' team. His first Pokemon is Scrafty, and Tinkerbell's Play Rough does 4 times effective damage to deplete all its health. Against Skuntank, I switch in a Pal, who uses a couple of close combats to take it out, but his health falls into the yellow. Against Malamar, I switch back into Tinkerbell, who can resist its hits and defeat it with Play Rough. Finally is Obstagoon, and a powerful Play Rough takes half of its health. Unfortunately, Obstagoon knows Counter, which strikes back with 2 times the power. I watch devastated as Tinkerbell's health fades to 0. Not only is this a huge loss for my team, but I don't have the finances at the moment to make up for the recent losses I've experienced. Rototom comes back in and a Hydro Pump takes Obstagoon out, earning me my next badge, but it's going to take a good week in the stock market to save my team from ruin and allow this challenge to continue. Week 8's Dow ends in a 7, so I'm returning to Alola to face the Fairy Trial. These are the Pokemon I'll have to beat to earn my final gym badge. My investments are still all losing money, but since I've lost 2 team members the last 2 weeks, I need to sell some stocks to earn some money and get a new teammate. I sell one of my Microsoft shares and both my Google shares to replenish my bank. Since I've lost my ground type and my steel type, I decided to bring both these types back onto the team with a Pokemon who has great coverage moves. Welcome, Oliver the Steelix. With only 1 week of investing left before the Pokemon League, I can only hope that my investments will recover and I can buy a 4th and hopefully even 5th team member next week. Mina's trial begins with Blissey, who is an easy target for 1 close combat from Pal. Pelipper comes in next, setting up Rain with Drizzle, but I can switch in a Rototom who can eradicate Pelipper with a 4 times effective Discharge. Last is the ace Ribombee itself, so I start with Steelix. Unfortunately, Bug Buzz lowers Oliver's special defense, so I can only take 2 Bug Buzzes before I need to switch. I get some good damage in with Rock Slide first though. From there, I switch in a Pal on a resisted Bug Buzz, but this attack also gets a special defense drop. Fortunately, Pal is still bulky enough to take a Dazzling Gleam, and I finish the battle with an Acrobatics. one more week until the Elite Four. Week 9 is now here, and this time I used the last 5 digits of the Dow Jones to determine the Pokemon League lineup I'll have to face. I'll have to defeat the Ice-type user Lorelei, Water-type user Nessa, Steel-type user Wickstrom, and Dragon-type user Drake, before arriving for the final battle against Champion Gita. My stocks are low, and after selling Microsoft, I only have $436 to spend. Surely not enough for anything very powerful, but I'm down to only 3 team members, so it will take a miracle to save me. That's when I think of the solution. Here from Ninjago, meet Sensei Wu, the Shedinja. Shedinja's Wonder Guard ability makes him immune to 13 of the 18 Pokemon types. The trade-off is that he only has 1 HP, but if I use him right against Pokemon who can't hurt him, he can make this challenge quite a bit easier. With my remaining cash, I buy my longtime friend Marty the Azurill, who is immune to 2 types and can therefore be a great pivot or a sacrifice. I get my team ready, then head to Kanto for my first opponent. Lorelei's first Pokemon is Dewgong. I start with Rototom, who takes Dewgong's attacks very well and can retaliate with just 2 discharges. Cloyster comes out next, and it is immediately outsped and knocked out by another discharge. Slowbro has no way of damaging Shedinja, so I send Sensei Wu out. Unfortunately, Slowbro uses Yawn, and though I get in 1 good Shadow Claw, I need to switch in order to stop Sensei Wu from falling asleep. Rotom comes back out and discharges to knock out Lorelei's 3rd Pokemon. Next is Lapras, who can't directly hurt Shedinja, but does know Confuse Ray. I start with Sand attacks to lower Lapras' accuracy, switching out into another Pokemon to shake off Confuse Ray anytime it hits and confuses the Sensei. Eventually, Lapras misses enough consecutive Confuse Rays for Shedinja to take the kill with Shadow Sneak. Finally is Jinx, who again cannot hit Sensei Wu, and a single Shadow Claw ends the fight, my team still fully intact. From Galar, Nessa is next, and her team has some good coverage, rendering Sensei Wu mostly useless. Unfortunately, both Infernape and Steelix have water weaknesses. Regardless, I start with Oliver to get some super effective Rock Slides in until I trigger Golisopod's emergency exit and Pelipper comes in. At this point, Steelix's health is incredibly low, and I switch in a Rototom. 1 4 times effective discharge depletes Pelipper's health. Barrascuda comes next, outspeeding with a Throat Chop, but it too goes down to just 1 of Rototom's electric attacks. Seeking hits the field, which is the only Pokemon of Nessa's who cannot hit Shedinja, so I send him in. Knowing Nessa is going to switch, I switch as well back into Rototom as Golisopod returns to battle. Its first impression attack is very strong, but Rototom's discharge finishes the job. Next, Dreadnought hits the field, and Rotom is too weak to stay in. None of my teammates can safely switch in and live to attack on the next turn, so I decide this is my moment to use my $190 sacrifice and let Marty go down in exchange for a safe switch. I send in Pal, who is faster than Dreadnought and can use a super effective stab close combat. Dreadnought survives on 1% HP, and with his defenses down, Pal falls to 1 liquidation. Sensei Wu comes in to finish Dreadnought with a priority Shadow Sneak and then get a free kill against Seaking. The battle is won, but I've lost Infernape, whose firefighting coverage I desperately need next against Wickstrom's team. I'm now reduced to only 3 team members, and I have 3 more Pokemon League battles to beat. Cut nearly in half, my team moves on from Nessa and heads to Kalos. Wickstrom's team is smaller, only consisting of 4 Pokemon, but losing Pal means this battle won't be a breeze. Oliver can start the battle with some digs against Klefki, and Klefki uses its Prankster ability to set up spikes, meaning Shedinja will never be able to safely switch in this whole match. When Klefki is gone, Probopass comes in, threatening Steelix with Earth Power. Fortunately, Rotom has Levitate, making it completely immune to Probopass's attack, as well as the entry hazards. 2 Hydro Pumps knock Probopass out. Scizor can do a lot of damage to Rotom, so I move back into Oliver, who takes a good chunk of damage from the spikes. I trade attacks with Scizor and eventually get Scizor down to 7%. Oliver can survive 1 more Night Slash and take the kill, but that means I have him out when Aegislash comes in, and I really need Rototom to be on the field at that time. I switch into Rotom, unfortunately taking a critical hit Night Slash from Scizor before I knock it out with Discharge. Lastly is the fearsome Aegislash, and I start out by paralyzing it with Thunder Wave. I'm very lucky that Aegislash gets fully paralyzed right away. Aegislash's paralyzed status condition also means that Rotom's Hex will now have double power in addition to being super effective. The 130 power super effective attack crits, but even that isn't enough, bringing Aegislash down to 2% health. Rototom's life hangs in the balance. as Aegislash gets fully paralyzed again. One last hex and the battle is won. Held together by chance, my trio of fighters live to fight again. But the next battle against Drake's dragon types from Hoenn will be far from easy. Drake's first Pokemon is Altaria, and Oliver starts out with some super effective rock slides, but is left at half health. Kingdra comes next, threatening with Surf, but I can switch into Shedinja, who is immune to all of its attacks. As Drake switches into Flygon, I switch into Rotom. Flygon's Dragon Claws do a lot of damage, but 2 of Rototom's Hydro Pumps are enough to take it out. Drake's strongest Pokemon, Salamence, comes out next, intimidating Rotom. I move into Oliver and begin with Rock Slides for super effective damage, but it isn't nearly enough. Salamence is too fast and too strong, and eventually I have no choice but to let Steelix go down to a crunch. Even Rotom is too slow for Drake's pseudo-legendary ace, and Rototom 2 is taken from me. Sensei Wu stands alone with his 1 hit point and tries to fight the inevitable with Shadow Sneak, but Salamence claims its 3rd victim. Just like that, my 9-week run is over, shut down just before the champion. So what did I learn from this challenge? Don't try to predict the stock market.